They have a combined 12 years in the National Football League. They combined for 65 career sacks, 232 tackles, 1 Pro Bowl selection, and 1 Employee of the Month award.
That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him.
It's Train and Grose on the All AZ Podcast Network.
Welcome in episode 84 of Train and Grose. B-Train, Bertrand Berry, Mike Grose, Sean Crespin. Back together again. It's been a minute since we recorded an episode of the podcast, and my bad.
It's all good, man. We're back in stride again.
My bad. I appreciate you guys carrying me to the finish line today because the voice is still not 100%. It sounds good first thing in the morning, though.
Sounds good right now.
If I had some commercial work or something like that, I could
fine.
do that.
And it wasn't all you. I mean, I had some work stuff that got in the way, too. So it's just been, one thing. Life
Together,
happens.
Everyone achieves more.
A little personal stuff, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's right. My teeth ripped out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. How'd that go?
Weird. That was my first time ever being put under, right? So
that picture of you and the doctor was hilarious.
Yeah,
by the way.
so I don't even which I don't remember taking at all.
That's
by the way.
classic.
It was very
But I'm
funny.
sitting in the chair. The one gal's putting the IV in for the to knock me out. The other girl's doing the blood pressure.
Yep.
And then the doctor's distracting me, talking about, what do you do for a living? And, I work in sports. So then
Did
we're
you
talking.
mention us?
And then, of course I did. And then all of a sudden, bam, I'm awake and it's over.
Yep.
It was the weirdest feeling. I'm having a conversation like we're having now, telling him what I do, this and that. Bam, I wake up, I'm good. Now, no embarrassing comments were made.
You don't know that.
I know, right? But luckily, they gave my mom had to be there to give me a ride because everybody else is at work.
Wow.
So she's there.
It all comes back to mom.
It always does, right? As it should. But they gave her like a 5-minute warning to go pull the car up and get the AC running. So she wasn't even around when I was really coming to. So there was no embarrassing videos, none of that kind of stuff. Other than the picture I don't remember taking.
That's all good. I remember I got my wisdom teeth out when I was in college, and I came home from college, and my mom took me and dropped me off. Apparently I was swearing like a freaking drunk sailor. She goes, whoa, some of the stuff you were saying on the way home. And
Wow.
Never mind.
I'll tell you the hardest part, though, the first week, they want you to stick to a complete liquid diet.
Yeah.
So it's been protein shakes, which are totally fine, but Jellos and puddings and things, like nothing else other than that. So that was a little tough. And now I'm able to eat soft stuff, noodles, a week later,
Wow.
scrambled eggs.
Wow.
Did they stitch you up, or they just...
I got a little, like 1 or 2 on the upper side over here, but the rest popped out easily, apparently.
Well, you look
So,
like
I'm good, dude.
You look like $1 million bucks.
Yep.
See, I feel
thanks.
smarter because I still got my wisdom.
You still got all
That's
your
right.
wisdom.
I got all
of it.
You're the wise man.
I got all
in this.
32.
Yeah.
You're the wise man in this conversation.
Thank you so very much.
Episode 84, as we mentioned at the top, and it's got to be Shannon Sharp, doesn't it? There's
Randy Moss.
But for us, like...
Oh, yeah, for personal
Because
reasons,
we have
yes.
the ability to pull...
Yes.
Right.
Was it Bus 3?
Bus 3.
Bus
That's
3.
Right. That's right. That's right.
One of the best stories
I love that story.
on the Train and Grose podcast is the bus street story.
Yeah.
And we're not going to tell it now. Google it.
I'll tell you this. Every time now I see, because, now these pictures go crazy. Everybody walking into a stadium gets their picture taken, and they got to have the fit just right. But every time I see one that's a little questionable, I instantly think of what would Shannon say on Bus 3.
Oh, it wasn't just Shannon.
Every time I see one, I'm like, oh, Shannon would kill this guy on Bus 3.
He was just a ringleader, but it was a bunch of comedians. Everybody took their shot. Everybody got their pound of flesh. We talked about Ruben Drones, my brother. Shout out to Ruben. Love you, brother. But, we both know about that San Francisco trip.
Oh, no.
We'll just
Oh,
leave
so
that
that's
right
the
there.
name. We didn't have a name attached to the San Francisco
He's
trip.
just one. I actually had a situation myself.
What were you wearing?
So
What'd you go with?
So I had on a black suit, but it did not have a collar.
Okay.
And so they proceeded to roast me up after the game.
Oh, after the game.
After the game. I mean, they didn't say much before the game because I had on a traditional suit. Everything other than the collar looked traditional, right?
Okay.
So then after the game, I think I played pretty well, but it did not save me from the jokes. A couple I remember was they were like, hey, it's a nice suit, collar sold separately. They also had one, it's like Yeah, they went through TSA and they found your collar, bro. You need to go pick it.
It's a lost and found. So right now, if we went to your house, how many collarless suits are in the closet?
That would be 0. That one did not make it long after that trip. So,
all right. Did anybody ever get Shannon?
Yeah, Shannon would get got.
So they would get it too.
Everybody got it.
Good.
I mean, nobody was safe, but you just had the Kaiser Sose's, the usual suspects.
Of course, yeah.
We knew.
Nice.
You knew bus 3. If you got on bus 3, you better come correct.
You got to be right.
Otherwise, it's curtains for you. And that's coaches. That's other players. That's front office. If you're bold enough to get on bus 3, all bets are off. We will light you up. It don't matter.
I love it. I love that story.
Do not get on bus 3.
Do
if
not
you
get on bus
any
3.
concerns
Hey.
about what you're wearing.
So
That's right.
if we're talking number 84, absolutely he's got to be on there.
He's on there, but I said
But Randy for sure.
Randy is up there because of his immediate impact.
And I heard something, and I want to stick with that point
All
because, and I usually don't do this, but it was local radio.
Okay.
But we'll give a shout out. Gambo on his show, they were talking about the year that Randy Moss came out.
Rookie season, 1998.
And they went and looked at the draft in 1999.
He went 22nd.
The Green Bay Packers in the 1999 draft took a defensive back with their first pick, their second pick, their third pick, and their seventh pick. So you want to talk about immediate impact and forcing the hand of an opponent, and the Green Bay Packers looking across the line saying, we got to deal with this guy?
Absolutely.
You talk about immediate impact, of course, what he did on the field, but the residual, what he meant and what opponents thought as they plotted their future.
Mike, he's the only guy that I believe in NFL history that is on the number 1 and the number 2 total offense teams in NFL history.
Right.
That 1998 Minnesota Vikings. You also go to the 2007 New England Patriots,
yeah,
where he and Tom Brady lit up the entire league.
Yeah.
He had 23 respectively. Brady had 50, and of course we all know what happened in
All right,
State Farm Stadium.
So for 84, we'll go 1 and 1A. Just Shannon.
No, go ahead.
No, I was
Finish
just
your
going to
thought.
say Shannon out of respect to the show.
Yeah, no doubt.
And
that's my guy.
And
That's
Randy
my guy.
Moss for what he did on the field.
Can we just talk about how we've had some of the most memorable Super Bowls at State Farm Stadium? Like that made me think about
Yeah, in college games too.
college games, but the 2 Super Bowls that come to mind, you got New England, and you got.
We just had a breaker go out in the
Breaker 1-9.
The good thing is none of this went out, so we're still recording.
Let's keep going then.
But the breaker went out. So for that side, probably because we have 2 AC units plugged in. So Grose and I will keep talking.
We'll keep talking
because I don't know where your breaker box is, or I'd get it.
You
But
keep
we got
talking, you can call the electrician.
We plugged in not 1 but 2 AC units. It's a little much for that particular breaker.
But picking up on the point that B-Train made is the Super Bowls, of course. The games, the catch. That stadium has hosted more than its fair share of memorable events, and the Super Bowl's topped the list without question.
Well, yeah, Eli leading the charge in both of those, right? And then you've got or 2 of the 3, because remember, it's not just the Giants winning their 2 here. Right. It was also the interception at the goal line.
Yeah.
Patriots over Seattle as well.
Right.
So you've had a handful of Super Bowl. Every Super Bowl that's been in that stadium. Oh, and by the way, it's there again this year. Has been absolutely sensational.
Absolutely, and even going back to some of the games we talked about with B-Train, some of the Packer-Cardinal games in that stadium.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Every playoff game with the Packers in that stadium's been ridiculous. The one he played in.
Well,
but
that's
then
what you say.
the one with the 2 Hail Marys just a couple of years ago as well.
Right.
That Larry winds up with the big run and then punching it in.
When you say Packers-Cardinals playoff game at the stadium, you got to say which one.
Yeah.
So, that stadium. How did we even go there? Oh, because
B-Train brought it up.
B-Train brought it up because of that. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we're recording this on Cutdown Day in the NFL. It's August 30th. Teams had to get down to the required number of players on the roster, so tough day around the NFL. A lot of guys out of work. That's the one hand, but it creates opportunity. And one of the things I want to touch on as we look at this is some of the notable moves around the league. And B-Train brought this up a couple weeks ago, maybe even months ago now, when we were talking on the podcast about Jimmy Garoppolo and his situation in San Francisco. What are you going to do if you're the Niners with Jimmy Garoppolo, that big contract? Your Trey Lance is your quarterback of the future. And B-Train came up with the idea that the best course of action for the 49ers, the best course of action perhaps for Jimmy Garoppolo, and the best course of action for the Browns, given what's played out, is for the Browns to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Apparently, the combination of his old salary and the asking price that the 49ers had was too high. So Jimmy Garoppolo is going to stay with the 49ers. And our friend Matt Maiocco, who was on the B-Train show, you probably had him on 98.7 when you were doing your show.
Yes, we did.
Does an outstanding job covering the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, you can look at this situation from a couple different angles, and I'll let you cover it from Jimmy Garoppolo's angle and what you thought about that move from him as a player. But I thought Matt Maiocco brought up a great point. Like, if this is how it was going to play out ultimately, the 49ers didn't do themselves any favors from an optics standpoint. Now, there's a guy that's been in the system, so it shouldn't be a big leap. But this guy did not get any reps during practice. He did not work with the receivers during practice. He was not issued a playbook during practice because the thought was he was going to be elsewhere. So he was under contract. He was coming off injury. They let him into the facility to work out, get himself right, get the shoulder right, work with the training staff. But that was it. Trey Lance is quoted as saying, I saw him in the hallways, but that was pretty much it.
Mike, I think about what they were able to do and how Jimmy G signed off on it. It really was, we're going to ostracize you because we can't give you away. Like, we know you're a valuable enough piece that we're not going to just let you walk out of the door. We're going to try to get something for you. But I think for Jimmy G and the 49ers, if you were to take Jimmy Garoppolo's name off of this resume, a guy that has won 70% of his games, a guy that has gone to 2 NFC championship games, the most recent one, and been to a Super Bowl in the process and was one throw away from possibly winning a Super Bowl, you would say that guy would be a hot commodity. Why in the world would the team that he went to those NFC championship games and Super Bowl with want to let him go? But they understood that they wanted to go with Trey Lance. They gave up just about everything to go get Trey Lance. And he showed enough promise to where they were like, hey, we're done with you. Thanks for your service. Thanks for getting us to two NFC championship games, a Super Bowl, but we're going to move on for the young, unproven guy, a guy that's thrown less than 300 passes since high school, Mike.
Right.
When you have that type of faith and that type of trust in a young guy and a second-year guy, one, that says that Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't the main cog in that success of the San Francisco 49ers. And you talk about a shiny new toy. I think the moment he overthrew the receiver in the Super Bowl, I think Kyle Shanahan was looking to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo.
How is that going to affect the 49ers, though, with Jimmy Garoppolo still in the building? Because I think we all agree there's going to be a little bit of a break-in period here. Trey Lance, I mean, I would be surprised if he came out and, lit the world on fire.
Yeah, you got to give him a real shot.
You got to give him a real shot, and we
shot.
talked about it. It's a 17-game season, and we saw how strong the 49ers finished a year ago. But I just think that, again, going back to your word that you used, and I like it, it's optics. When Trey Lance struggles, where are the cameras going to go on the sideline?
Yeah. Jimmy G,
right?
If he's there. But here's my thought about Jimmy G. I think when they restructured this contract and they put the no trade clause in, Mike, it was basically an $18 million shave of a contract where he said, okay, I'm going to give you guys back $18 million. I'm going to put a no trade clause on so you can't just ship me anywhere.
Right.
So I'll have some sort of say in where I go. And now I become a much more viable option for one of these teams, say Seattle, say Cleveland. Now $6 million is much more easier to absorb than $24.5 million. So I think for Jimmy G, he didn't have much of a choice but to do this. And I think before the start of the regular season, I don't anticipate Jimmy G being a member of the San Francisco 49ers.
All right. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Meanwhile, down the road in Los Angeles, Matthew Stafford still working with whatever that elbow injury. And I think the thing is, like, in the NFL, you deal with injuries.
It's part of the deal.
And you understand it. And I think the problem that I would have if I'm looking at this from the outside looking in, they can't figure out what it is. Some are describing it as a baseball injury. They're puzzled by it. That's the thing that I think. And he said, hey, look, I'm going to work through it. It is what it is.
Right.
But throwing arm elbow injury for Matthew Stafford, look, they're still the odds-on favorite, I think, if not in the entire NFC, definitely the NFC West. But it's still got to be of concern.
Oh,
if you're the Rams.
If Matthew Stafford goes down, this team is finished, Mike. This team is so paper thin at every position on the squad. Remember, they're basically the team that said F them draft picks. They didn't care about their draft picks. They gave away all of their draft capital to bring in these name guys, and it worked. It actually worked. They won a Super Bowl in their own stadium. I don't think you could have envisioned a scenario any better than how it played out for the Los Angeles Rams.
Absolutely.
And I think if you were to go to Les Snead and to Stan Kroenke and Sean McVay and ask them, was it worth it? I think unequivocally they would all say yes. If they don't win another championship, they got one. And they proved that you can find yourself in a situation where you can buy a Super Bowl if you are smart enough and you're strategic enough to get the right pieces to fit with the veterans that you were able to draft and coach up. So if Matthew Stafford goes down, they've got nothing behind him, Mike.
Yep.
And the rest of the team, if any of their star players go down, there's nothing behind them.
And meanwhile, way up the road in Seattle, Geno Smith beats out Drew Lock in one of the at least mentioned
for now
destinations for Jimmy Garoppolo.
For now.
And I don't think the 49ers wanted really any part of him in the division. But, Geno Smith's the guy, beat out the guy that was traded or part of the trade for Drew Lock. And so that's what you got here with the Seahawks in the West. And I was saying before we started recording, it's relatively quiet here in Arizona, all things considered, when it comes to some of the stuff we were dealing with at the end of the season and, of course, throughout the duration until Kyler actually got the contract.
Right. No, but you go back to Seattle and you wonder where that team is actually going. And what I mean by that is you've got a head coach. How old is Pete Carroll now?
70-something.
Right. Late 70s.
Yeah.
Right. Like on the high end of 70s. I'll look it up here in a moment. But where's that team going? Like, is he long for the job? Is he there for the rebuild, if you will? You don't know what your quarterback situation looks like at all. Where is that team headed? You always, as a fan, I think, look for a direction.
Right.
If you're a Seattle Seahawks fan right now, do you have a direction?
To your point, Pete Carroll's 71 years of
71,
age when the season starts.
Okay.
He's got a birthday coming up here in just about 2 weeks.
Right. So
you're right. At some point, if you're the Seahawks, the front office, once Russell Wilson's gone and you see what you have remaining around him, don't you have to make the decision just to let's burn it to the ground and start over? Yeah, and that would include a different coach.
Right, but this is where it gets difficult. He's earned the right.
He has to make that decision.
He's earned the right, right? So he's going to have to make that decision. So it's a difficult one to make if you're Seattle because you've got a guy that has more than earned the right to decide when he wants to hang it up. But you're facing a long-term rebuild right now with that football team. So you got to look at it. Okay, is he long for it? Is he up for a rebuild? Is this the right fit? Right now, I look at Seattle and it's hard to find a direction. Regardless of who the quarterback was going to be, Geno Smith, whoever, what's the direction right now of that football team?
And we talk about that in sports all the time. Like, you understand there's ebbs and flows, and Seattle felt the highs, right, with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And that's all well and good. But what's the plan?
Yeah.
Like, we talk about this all the time. Like, and it doesn't have to be the NFL. If you are a fan of the Seahawks or watching the Seahawks as a competitor in the NFC West, B-Train, you're like, what's the plan? What are we doing if with the Seahawks? And to Sean's point, I don't know if you can figure that out right now.
Mike, I really don't understand the re-upping of DK Metcalf if you're in a rebuild mode.
Right.
If you're going to sign DK Metcalf to a long-term deal, which is comparable to a lot of the top receivers in the NFL, then you obviously want to invest into a quarterback that's worthy of DK Metcalf's status. And meaning that if you're not going to have Russell Wilson, then you need to have somebody that's comparable to a Russell Wilson that can come in and actually get him the ball where he needs it, when he needs it, Mike. So I understand that they want to be able to bring butts in the seat, and DK Metcalf brings butts to the seat as far as a player and just star quality. But when you start talking about winning and
DK Metcalf and his bugs.
Yeah, I hear you.
His Nestle Quick.
Yeah, I mean, but when you start talking about them being able to win, I don't know how much they've invested into actual winning.
And they are. I mean, you can say whatever you want, and I think at some point we'll look and I don't know if we do predictions so much as just see where things stack up. Again, no plan, and this is a team that I don't know what the win total projection is, low single digits, I'm guessing. And again, Sean raises a great point. What is Pete Carroll's plan? Like it has to begin and end there.
I thought the same. So I was starting to have the same thoughts when the Arizona Cardinals and Bruce Arians were at that crossroads, like if they were going to renew his contract or whatnot. Because remember when he decided to leave and he had the health issues and whatnot, the Arizona Cardinals had no plan either. They had no quarterback. They had no direction. So you had to look at it like, okay, he's at the age that he is. He's having the health issues that he does. Is he the guy that's going to be long for a rebuild, 3, 4, 5 years? You really have to ask yourself that. I mean, those are hard conversations to have when it's somebody like a Pete Carroll or, hell, Bruce Arians had, the most wins in franchise history since the Cardinals came to Arizona. And so those are hard things to do, hard decisions to make, but you got to look at it realistically.
And the stress that goes with that, right? It's hard enough when you're winning, but when you're struggling, you're going through a rebuild at the age of, I think Bruce Arians was in the mid-60s at that point. And Pete Carroll, as we just said, he's going to turn 71 at the start of this season.
Oldest coach in the NFL, right?
And, that's a lot. I mean, he looks like he doesn't look 71. He looks, to be a,
chomping in that gum, man.
Chomping
Still got
on
all
the gun,
kinds of energy.
up and down the sideline. But so we'll see on that front. Around the NFL, just interesting stuff that happened. Our friend Josh Rosen, he was bounced off of Team
Browns.
6.
Let's see. Yes.
Team 6.
Yeah.
I mean, don't feel bad for Josh Rosen. I looked it up. We were talking about it with some friends at work. $14 million in career earnings, cash earnings, most of that from the Arizona Cardinals signing bonus. But don't feel bad for Josh Rosen. But at some point, if you need a quarterback, like
he's not the guy.
He can't be.
I look at former Arizona Cardinal quarterbacks, and their life expectancy outside of Arizona was very slim. I mean, the one that comes to mind is Matt Leinart, Derek Anderson. The list goes on and on, and there are a lot of guys that don that uniform that once they didn't put that uniform on anymore and they tried to put somebody else's on, it didn't last very long.
Well, in that draft class, if you look at those quarterbacks, and I know Josh Rosen was up there, Sam Darnold was up there, but you flip it around, Josh Allen, and, of course, Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
And that's where I want to go next. Lamar Jackson still without a contract. And, again, we love social media. And Lamar Jackson's out there lurking when he replies to just somebody's random tweet. Somebody said something to the effect of, well, they offered him more money than that. And Lamar Jackson off the verified account said,
no, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
No, they did not.
So he's keeping it real and making sure the facts are out there. But what are you waiting for if you're the Ravens?
Well, you're still pissed at the Cleveland Browns for Deshaun Watson's contract. That they're one of those teams that they saw this coming on the horizon and they thought, oh my God, and Cincinnati is right behind them. Like, dude, what are you doing? Because their guy is going to be coming in asking for a whole lot more than that because he's actually brought the team to a Super Bowl already before Deshaun Watson or a Josh Allen. So the fact that he's actually delivered already, he's going to be asking for a king's ransom. And when you start talking about fully guaranteed $230,
Bingo. Right there.
That's the problem that a lot of these teams have because once you allocate that type of money to the quarterback, now the rest of your team is going to be a lot of mixed parts.
And the part about being pissed at the Browns is that right there. The money part, you can say, hey, you way overpaid that guy.
Sure.
But when historically, contracts are not guaranteed.
Right.
Whatever happens, happens.
Right.
But when you come in and say it's fully guaranteed, if I'm Lamar Jackson and he represents himself.
Plus $2 million.
Whatever.
That plus $2 million.
The 100% part to me is as important as whatever the money is.
Yeah. Mike,
100%.
When you start, you get paid what you're worth, Mike. You get paid for what your value is. And if you start just looking at resumes, Deshaun Watson's resume does not stack up against a lot of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. So when you look at his contract as an outlier, the players are like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to play that game. He is now the standard. He's the benchmark now. So if you're Joe Burrow, if you are Lamar Jackson, I mean, these guys are going to be asking for a king's ransom because as these young guys continue to get better, and, I mean, there's a quarterback in Los Angeles with the Chargers, he's going to be asking for a king's ransom as well. So there are a lot of quarterbacks that looked at that contract and said, oh, yeah, here we go, brother.
And meanwhile, I would love to be on the fly on the wall the next time the owners all get together and sit across the table from the Browns ownership and say, what did you do?
What were you thinking?
What did you do? Real quickly before we get out of here, we'll focus on the Cardinals on the other side. Give a shout-out to our man Dan Minucci. We have to.
Okay.
What do you do now?
Rosters are released, and he's got not one but 2 quarterbacks
Brock Purdy.
that he trained.
Hey, Brock looked solid, man. I don't know if you guys watched much.
I did.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy earned the third
49ers.
spot on the 49ers roster, and if B-Train's correct and Jimmy Garoppolo leaves sooner rather than later, he presumably you're number 2.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Bryce Perkins made the cut again with the Los Angeles Rams. Bryce Perkins, a product of Chandler High School. Brock Purdy, a Perry Puma. But both worked out with our friend Dan Minucci. And I think that's, again, we'd love to bust him, give him a hard time. But if I had a son that said, Dad, I want to be a quarterback.
Taking it right to him.
Right to Dan Minucci.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, you start to look at the profile of Arizona-born athletes.
Chase Lucas made the Lions. You see that?
It's starting to raise, Mike. You're starting to see a lot of players come from the great state of Arizona. And I think there are a number of reasons for that. We don't need to get into all of them now, but it's just cool to see these guys that are local heroes and local legends really starting to make good, not only in college but at the highest level.
And some of them going undrafted as well, and
just get
landing
there.
on
You just gotta get
rosters.
there,
right? Darian Butler, who wasn't born here but played for ASU, wound up with the Raiders and worked his way into an undrafted position. So let me ask you this. I know you have a thought there, Grose, but real quick, cut day in the NFL.
Worst day of the week.
Take us through it.
It's emotionally draining because, one, I've been on both sides. I was a guy that was a surefire guy that was not even close to being
Third-round
cut.
pick as well. I mean, was that year even?
Pick.
Was that even your rookie year?
No, I wasn't in danger that year either.
Right.
But I've been cut 3 times.
Yeah.
And to go through that on either side is emotionally draining because you spent all offseason getting to know these guys. You're in practice with them day in and day out. You've trained with them day in and day out. You've been in the locker room. You get to know them personally. You get to know their family. Some of these guys are married. Some of these guys, you get to know their mom and dad. They come out to the games and you go to functions and they've got a significant other or they've got a wife. And now this guy who had banked on being a part of this team and having that income to provide for his family, all of a sudden now is having to uproot his young family and have to go somewhere else to try to keep his dream going.
When you're on the bubble, what's the day like? What are you doing? Are you waiting for a phone call? Like, what do they do? What happens?
Each team is different.
Yeah.
I was on teams where they called you at home, and I was on teams where you would do the run after the last preseason game, and then when you came off the field after the run, they would bring in the guys, and of course they had to do that perp walk basically through the locker room, which was not my favorite. But anytime that you saw a guy with all of the emotion on his face, knowing that his dream was over with that particular team, it's gut punching. And as a guy who went through it a couple of times, there's no easy way to do it.
Charles Davis, who for my money is one of the best football analysts there is. I love Charles Davis. He had a comment on one of the preseason games I was watching. I think he's doing the Titans game or something. He said, this is the world's longest job interview. It starts, in college, into the pro days, into the combine, into getting drafted or not drafted and finding a team, mini camps, preseason games. He said this is the world's longest job interview. So even when you're watching the fourth quarter of the last preseason game, respect what these guys are doing right now and what they're going through.
And it's not even for one of 53. It really isn't, because we talk about it on a roster, draft picks, et cetera, et cetera. There's only a handful
it's like number 50 through 53
or
48 through 53.
So
it's
few
what you're fighting for.
That you're actually going for. Absolutely. And I was going to ask you the flip side of that. You talk about how coming here changed your life. Denny Green brought you down here. So obviously you never worried about that once you became a member of the Arizona Cardinals. But same question that Sean asked you, but from that perspective, when you are set on the roster, when you know you've got a starting job locked up, but you're around those guys that you just described, how do you as a veteran in that situation handle that day? To keep your head down? I mean, it's got to be hard knowing that just everything you said, those guys aren't going to be here when you come to work tomorrow.
One of the hardest days of my life, Mike, was August of 2003. I was in Denver, my last year in Denver, and I was going to be a member of the team. I wasn't in doubt because I just won the starting job. I had just been given a contract extension, and they had said that things were going to work out. My buddy, my former college teammate, Darian Jackson, was a quarterback on the team. and he had been with me 2001 and 2002 with the Denver Broncos. Come 2003, he gets released. The pain on his face, Mike, I felt more pain for him than I ever did for myself. And when you start talking about dealing with other guys that are on the bubble, you root like hell for those guys. Right. You want them to get every chance, every rep that they can get in preseason, every rep they can get in practice, and you're pulling for them. When you're on the sideline and your day is done and you can put the hat on backwards and you get the sunflower seeds and all that other stuff, you start rooting for guys individually. You start putting on the pom-poms and cheering for your guys to go out there and have success because you know every play counts as far as his longevity with that particular team or his career.
We'll step aside here. On the other side, I want to get into the Cardinals. I also ask you about – we were texting about this. I want to ask you about Hard Knocks too.
All right.
We'll do that on the other side. You're listening to Train and Gross.
Train and Gross.
Welcome back in Train and Gross. We're recording this on Cutdown Day in the NFL, August 30th, season about 10 days away. Well, actually, it starts a week from tonight, the Thursday night game, but the rest of the games 10 days from now. Before we jump into the Cardinals, I got to ask you about this because we were texting and I only got half the story. I have HBO. I don't know if you have HBO,
do.
Sean Crespin. You don't.
I do not.
But I've been watching Hard Knocks. I didn't have HBO in the past, so I'm not just watching it now because it's the Lions. I just happen to have it on now, and
you're from it's
from pretty
Michigan.
interesting. But the thing that I love the most, and you get to see these guys, you get behind the scenes. I know they know the cameras are on,
right?
But I got to believe that the relationship, and Sean, I don't know if you've watched this, but Aaron Glenn and Deuce Staley, the relationship between those two guys, they say they're best friends.
Yep.
But watching them on the sidelines when they're at inter squads or practice or drills, when offense goes against defense, Deuce Staley, the offensive coordinator, running back coach, and and Aaron Glenn is the defensive coordinator.
DB.
It's pure genius. Like, you could make a show out of the two of these guys.
Yeah. And, Aaron Glenn and I go all the way back to high school. We played against each other in high school. And he was a stud back then and played against him in high school, college, and the pros because he was a Texas A&M guy. He went to Nimitz, which is one of my rival high schools back in Houston, Texas. Shout out to the Humble Wildcats. And I think we played against each other a couple stops where he was with the Jets, I believe. We got it on a couple times and maybe another stop. But anytime you have former players, Mike, they have a different perspective about camp. They have a different perspective about practice. They have a different perspective about everything. And I think if you are the Hard Knocks production company and the production crew, why wouldn't you take advantage of that knowledge? Because that's the type of stuff that you just can't get. I don't care who you are, even if you're a coach. If you didn't play, that's still yet a different perspective. I'm not dogging on guys that didn't play that are coaching.
No, I get it.
But when you are a coach and you were a damn good player like both those guys were, they have an insight that you just can't buy, Mike. There's not enough money in the world to buy the insight that they can provide to players.
And to your point, HBO knows that.
Yes.
Right? And at some point they introduced the coaching staff.
Correct.
And they talked about, and I don't remember the number of years that this Lions staff has playing in the NFL.
Right.
And I'm not going to do them all, but Antoine Randall L. on that staff.
My goodness.
Hank Fraley on that staff. I'm looking at their quarterbacks coach. I'm like, damn, that guy looks familiar. It's Mark Brunell. It looks like the
How about that?
Looks like the old guy that used to play. An older version of the guy that used to play in the NFL. And, of course, the two we were just talking about, Deuce Staley and Aaron Glenn. And the head guy.
Dan Campbell.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this. Like I said, I'm from Detroit, long-suffering. Lions have been so bad for so long.
Sure.
On the one hand, you're rooting for these guys to get it done. You'd like to see them turn it around.
Yep.
Dan Campbell is one of those guys that, blue-collar type of thing. Some of the stories he told from the players, he was talking about the first preseason game. And he goes, guys, I don't expect a lot. It's preseason, whatever. He goes, you want to make me mad? He goes, if I walk around and you're not in the game cheering for your teammates, that'll make me mad. He used his own language. That'll make me mad. Correct. The other thing, he goes, I'm telling you from experience, don't take your equipment off. He goes, you might be done.
Right.
And I'm not going to put you back in unless I have to. But when I was with the Cowboys, Jason Witten and I were hamming it up on the sidelines. I started taking my tape off, my shoulder pads off, and all of a sudden the guy who's in front of me gets hurt. It wasn't Jason. He said, who's going back in the game, me or Jason Witten?
Yeah.
He said, so I had to get dressed on the sideline.
Yeah.
He said, those are the two things that will make that will get me if I see that on the sideline. But I can't help but think that he would be a lot to play for. Like that energy 24/7, 365. I understand what he's trying to do. We saw it in the introductory press conference, we talked about biting a guy in the knee or something like that.
Yep.
I just think that day in and day out, that would be a grind for those players.
Mike, I don't think that he actually comes with that energy every single day. I think once he knows that the cameras are rolling, I think to some degree he plays to that a little bit.
Right.
But you know that when you sign up for it, you know what you have to bring to the table because you can't just be a mundane coach and talk monotone when you've got the cameras rolling. They brought the cameras in to get a certain aspect of the game that they couldn't normally get. So I'm going to give him a pass on that, and I think once you get to the regular season and then the cameras are gone, I think you get a much more level-headed coach, a guy that's more even-keeled throughout the course of the week, and he knows how to ramp his emotions up according to what day of the week it is.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. And obviously the cameras are a big part of that production. And the worst part of this show is this week where they show the final cuts.
Gut-wrenching.
So we'll see. But it's been enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's been enjoyable to watch.
Did Aiden Hutchinson do it for you with the rookie song?
He did, but I'm gonna say this. He's a Michigan guy, but he seems, can I say this, like kind of a weird dude.
Hey, it's your team. If anybody can say it, you can say it.
And I know he's a rookie, and I know he's the money and everything that goes with
son of a player, former player.
Son of a former player, but like when they show and when you watch him in the drills, he's all there's been no question about what he brings on the field.
Correct.
But on the sideline, when the players are all, he's off to the side by himself.
Yep.
And he was in, and I cannot remember the guy's name. I wish I could because it's a great story. A guy that played football at Memphis, and he was undrafted free agent.
Okay.
He's been in the country from Africa for 6 years, learned the game. He wanted to play basketball, wasn't any good at basketball, wasn't good enough for basketball, and they were in the ice bath together afterwards. And some of the interactions, like Aiden Hutchinson, well, why'd you pick Memphis? And the dude was like, because that's the only school that wanted me.
I didn't have a choice.
They gave me a chance.
Right.
So just things like that where, like, I wonder what his relatability is when it comes down to it. But on the drills, on the games footage they've had of him, which has been marginal, he looks like he's all that.
Mike, I do believe that personality is not one of the main reasons guys are drafted.
No.
You draft guys because what they bring to the field and their production level and how they can help this team win.
Fair.
If you're the Detroit Lions, you don't need a rah-rah guy. You need a guy that can actually go out and get after quarterbacks and play the run at a solid level and a high level. And so if he's a little bit weird, some of the best players in all of football have been a little weird. I think most people who were teammates with Lawrence Taylor once upon a time would say kind of a different dude. You know, you think about Hendrickson back in the day.
Yeah.
He was a little bit different for the Raiders, longtime Raider. You would say he was a little bit different, but it didn't matter as long as you took care of your business on the field, Mike. And I think more times than not, those things get brought to the forefront, if you will, because you have cameras, extra cameras, and all that kind of stuff. But if the cameras weren't there, we would never know.
Well, that's
the
just what I was going to say
of Aiden Hutchinson, and we wouldn't care.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And to your point, if he gets it done on the field, who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares? Cut down day here in Arizona, and I don't know that there was a lot of, when it came down to it,
a lot of surprises.
A lot of surprises.
No.
When you look at it, Andy Deutsch and Greg Deutsch, and Andy Isabella both make the team. They kept all the running backs that they had on the roster. There was some question whether or not they were going to be able to do that. They did release the long snapper, which in the big scheme of things, is not really a big story. And apparently our friend Darren Urban says that's a short-term plan, just that they needed to do it from a number standpoint. Just hopefully he's still around when
clears waivers and all that kind of stuff,
you need him back.
Yep.
But after, and we started to talk about this a little bit when we were going around the NFC West, after kind of a drama-filled offseason, when you think about how Kyler's agent blew it up right after the Super Bowl, scrubbing of social media, does he going to get a contract or not, and the suspension of DeAndre Hopkins and some of the nonsense by Hollywood Brown, and once camp started, once they got into it, it seemed like it was
business as
it's
usual.
been fairly quiet out of Cardinals camp.
Business as usual, Mike. And I think sometimes when you're a team that has the expectations that the Cardinals have, a team that got to the playoffs last year and looking to get better and go deeper into the playoffs this year, no news is good news because you don't always want to have a lot of headlines about your team, Mike. You want to be able to kind of fly under the radar, if you will. If you're a team that knows that you have some players and you're looking to make some noise in your respective division and in your conference. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be the team with the bullseye on your back that everybody is talking about 24/7. So I didn't have a problem with that, but at the same time, those stories, will they be open-ended? Are they truly fully resolved? I know with DeAndre Hopkins, that's not going anywhere. The first 6 games, he's not going to be there. I think that really hurts their chances of getting off to a great start and really competing for the NFC West crown. But time will tell. Who knows what will happen with the Rams? The San Francisco 49ers is another team that's going to be in the mix, Mike. So I think you really have to wait and see. But I'll just say this for myself personally. This could be my least favorite season to look forward to in all my years of watching football, as far as the NFL is concerned. I don't remember ever being this disinterested in the NFL as much as I am this year.
Really?
I have more interest in college and I have more interest in high school. Obviously, for different reasons, my job allows me to have more of a vested interest in the younger guys. But when I think about the NFL, there aren't a lot of great stories. There isn't a lot of suspense about a particular matchup. There aren't any games that I'm just looking forward to and just saying, boy, I can't wait to see these teams get it on.
How about week 1? Baker playing the Browns, Russ Wilson playing the Seahawks.
That's a Baker thing. That's a Baker thing. I think because for one, I don't think the players on the Cleveland Browns are mad at Baker. He didn't piss them off. He didn't do anything on his way out the door to say that he's a bad guy and now a marked guy. They understand that he actually gave it up for them. He actually tried to play hurt. There's a lot of respect in the locker room for Baker Mayfield. So I don't think there's going to be the animosity from the Cleveland Browns. Now, Baker may have a chip on his shoulder because it's his former team. Yep. But, again, once you get past play 1, all that stuff gets out the window. And now you got to get into your game plan and you got to execute.
Russ going to Seattle week 1.
Again, I don't think that those players in Seattle are going to have vitriol towards Russell Wilson because they understand when he was there, he gave them a great chance to win. And they knew that they didn't really have the pieces to really compete like they could have in the NFC West. And you know, we can just say this, Russ is a bit of a cornball. And I don't think he was one of those controversial guys that people are going to feel some kind of way when he walks out the door. I think they're just going to be like, hey, he plays for the other team. Let's just go try to win this game.
Tua trying to put it together in Miami. Tyreek Hill, Waddle, if you go down the list.
Again, they're not the favorites in their own division. So to me, I'm much more interested to see what the Buffalo Bills look like.
Yeah, what Allen does this year. Yeah.
I'm much more interested in seeing can the Patriots get to the playoffs this year?
Can they get right?
What's going to happen with who's going to call the plays for the New England Patriots?
That's intriguing to me because, they just had a group. They just had a joint practice with the Raiders, and all reports are they look disjointed and just an absolute mess right now.
But who's calling the plays?
Mess.
You cannot underestimate how important it is for a quarterback to know who's going to be in his ear every single play and every single game. This platooning and okay, you get the first half, you get the second half. One thing players are, they're creatures of habit, and they want the same thing over and over and over again. And anytime you disrupt that, that's going to be a conflict for most of the players on that team, and in particular, the quarterback, the guy that's got to do the most thinking of everybody on the field.
Quarterback situation in Pittsburgh.
I think it's Mitchell Trubisky. I think you can't start the young kid. I think
hold that thought. We're gonna get into that and pump the brakes.
Oh, okay.
In that particular thought, I'm just going through in my head trying to think of
my trust is in Mike Tomlin. My trust is in Mike Tomlin.
I'm just trying to think of storylines because that's an interesting take that you're not seeing something in this NFL season. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm more interested in the Jacksonville Jaguars. I want to see.
That's another one. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to see what they're like because now they got a real coach and a guy that actually wants to be there and is about the game of football as opposed to personal situations.
I think how much will they look back on how they wasted that first year out of Trevor Lawrence?
Oh, big time.
Oh. Not only on the field because at some point you were only going to win what you were going to win, but from a development standpoint, they just ruined his first year.
Yeah,
and you knew even when you hired Urban Meyer that Trevor Lawrence was going to be there longer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the future. Your future was never Urban Meyer.
Yeah, and I started thinking about it like the AFC South, I think is going to be a disaster. I think the Tennessee Titans could be a disaster.
Yeah.
No A.J. Brown and no Julio Jones. I mean, who's Tannehill going to throw the ball to?
You still got
the Colts are a disaster.
Well, the Colts are intriguing because
they're a disaster.
But it's intriguing to see what Matt Ryan can do in that roster. If you ask me,
that's who you're relying on.
And both those teams, though, they're going to run the ball, and then on third, if it's third and short, we're running the ball again. You know what I mean? So it's not going to be fancy football. It's going to be a lot of grinding it out.
It's the anti-AFC West, right?
Exactly right.
That's where that balance is. If you're saying this is the best division in definitely the AFC, possibly in football, then to have that worst division in football, which I think you can make that
you're
case.
Probably right. It is
to
probably
balance
that
it off.
And then let's not forget the Houston Texans. My goodness. Enough said.
Yeah.
Right.
What about? And I'm not doing this because you're a Raiders fan. I already came out as the Michigan fan in this conversation, but the Raiders cut Alex Leatherwood today.
Yes.
And I understand that the Rams are kind of making it chic to say, all right, we don't need draft picks. But it's one thing to do it without the draft picks and get it done.
But you also have to understand that it's a completely new regime.
Right, and it goes back to the Mike Mayock tenure. But that hurts when you're in that competitive of a situation that the Raiders find themselves this year. And go ahead on the list of players
you
that
want to
were
hear this
drafted
list?
by Mike Mayock.
First-round picks. Now, again, Mike's odd because they couldn't – and how much of this was Gruden is the other question, right? Because if you could look at rounds 3 all the way down to 6, I mean, hell, you got Max Crosby, who's a Pro Bowler who they got in the 6th round. You got Hunter Renfrow, who's a 1,000-yard receiver in the 3rd round. You got multiple players rounds 3 through 6 who are starting on this team and helping turn it around. But here's their first-round picks. Starting in 2019 when they had 3 of them, remember, because of the Khalil Mack trade. Jonathan Abram, they declined his 5th-year option. Josh Jacobs declined his 5th-year option. Cleve Farrell declined his 5th-year option. Damon Arnett, cut. Henry Ruggs, cut. And now Alex Leatherwood, cut. So that's from 2019 through 2021, not a single first-round pick is even on the roster.
And Alex, that's a year. That's 1 year.
I'll tell you this. He was really bad last year. And watching preseason this year, he got even worse if that's possible. Wow. It looked like it was between the ears. Like as soon as it started to get sideways, he just regressed.
Which it makes it all the more remarkable that when you look at it and say, I think for me, Kansas City, Los Angeles, but the Raiders are right there.
Right.
This is.
But I give the new regime credit though. Like why kick the can down the road? Like we didn't make that draft pick. We don't believe in this particular player. Let's move on. Let's figure out who will be in that spot.
Right. And I just understand, for me, it's when you're on the outside looking in. I say this as you, who's very much a Raiders fan, and so take that with a grain of salt.
Yep.
The angst and the hand-wringing when they moved on from Josh Rosen here, because there you wasted a first-round pick and you traded up to get this guy. And I just the way the evolution of draft picks in the NFL is going is just kind of fascinating.
I mean, I look at the Los Angeles Rams, the fact that they have no regard for picks at all. And they still were able to win a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
I think you're starting to see the narrative change, Mike.
Yeah.
And that draft capital is not as valuable as maybe it once was in times past.
That's real.
So now you've got to be able to find players and find systems that they fit in, as opposed to, okay, I'd rather have the young guys that I could try to groom and coach up because, one, if the coach isn't going to be able to coach him up after 2-3 years, he's going to be gone too, just like the player. So there's not a lot of patience in today's game, and you always are looking at these big storylines, and one of the storylines, speaking of which I'm most looking forward to, which says a lot about my thoughts about the NFL season, is where does Odell Beckham Jr. land?
Yeah.
Will he land with the Rams again, or will he go to another suitor who's right on the cusp that's looking to add another piece? Will the Saints be a team that is able to continue their dominance of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Is Tom Brady going to have that fall-off season? A guy that just took 11 days off of camp.
Because he's 45 and got a lot of shit going on.
Got a lot of shit going on. I mean,
I'm watching that video as you said.
I mean, hey, if anybody gets a pass in year 23, it would be Tom Brady.
But still, it's not. It goes back to what we've been saying. It's not a look you expect.
No, it was not.
He's been a machine, maybe to his detriment, because we don't know what's going on outside of work.
Mike,
outside of the game. But
Mike, that presser was the first time he looked concerned. He looked a little worn and a little weathered, if you will. He kind of looked like he didn't have answers, and he wasn't the button-up Brady that we were accustomed to seeing.
Real quickly before we wrap up this segment, we'll come back to the Cardinals. I should have gotten to this earlier. a lot of question marks about this defense, right? And some of them were answered. Some of the young guys look good. I mean, obviously you don't know till week 1 till it's for real.
Yeah.
Secondary is a concern. The corners are a concern. Because I think the safeties might be the best safety group in the league. If not, they're among the best. But who's going to call the defensive plays? And the decision was made, at least for week 1, and he's got to earn it apparently every week. But
you surprised me with this one, Mike.
Isaiah Simmons.
Wow.
They say got the green dot. Isaiah Simmons has got the green dot week 1 for the Cardinals. And, here's a guy that he's going to play cornerback. He's going to play linebacker. He's going to be on the edge. They're going to move him all over the place. But they have enough confidence in him to give him that green dot. And they were talking about giving it to one of the safeties before. So it's Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah.
Do we make too much of who's wearing the green dot? A defensive
no,
player?
That is very important.
Okay.
It is very important to know who that guy is. The one thing that I can say when I was here with the Cardinals and when we were at our peak, when we had our success, we knew it was Carlos. We knew Carlos was a guy that he had the temperament for it. He wanted that role as the captain, as the guy that called the plays, and he embraced it, and he flourished in it. I mean, it was a role that he clearly was born to play. And I think the more you have that type of player on your team, a guy that's going to embrace it and excel in it, the better your chances of being successful are. We all know the quarterback is the green dot on the offensive side, but to be on the defensive side, those calls are they're crucial. We have to know, especially when you're playing hurry-up teams that are trying to speed you up, you have to be able to get that information to a lot of guys in a very short period of time.
Beyond just relaying what he just heard in the helmet, what's the role of that player?
He's the calming effect. The captain or the play caller is the only guy that talks in the huddle, and he's the guy that is supposed to be the attitude, if you will, and the temperament, the measuring stick of what the defense is going to be on a particular play or that particular series. If he's in there, which he should be, if he's the green dot guy, he should be in every play, then he should be the guy that you can look at how he's playing and you can pretty much tell how the defense is playing throughout the course of that game.
Well, and the other thing is, because the big question mark with Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons was their ability to stay on the field. Not because of injury, just because they were a liability.
Correct.
And if
Coverage,
you have the green dot,
if
what does that say? You've got to be on the field. You can't pass the helmet around.
No, you cannot.
Once you assign the green dot,
yes,
I think you get a backup in case of injury. Is what I understood.
Yes.
So that means that this coaching staff feels that Isaiah Simmons has improved to the point where they see him on the field for a majority of the plays.
Mike, if not now, when? This is his 3rd year. You got to figure it out. He's a first-round draft pick. He's a guy that came from a great pedigree out there in Clemson, a national champion, a guy that knows how to win per se. And if he doesn't know how to do it now, then he never will. So you have to try it and see if he can be that guy. You've got to push some guys to find their greatness. And I think Isaiah Simmons is one of those perfect guys that fit that role.
So we'll see.
Yes.
Week 1, he's got it against the Chiefs. All right, we'll step aside here. On the other side, we'll do a quick hit in the world of college football. B-Train's more interested in that. His team's got a big game coming up this weekend. We'll do that next on Train and Grose.
Train and Grose.
Week 0 started last week for college football, had a handful of games. I want to get to one of them in a minute, but you're Fighting Irish. Big game. I love big games week 1, and I love big games week 1 outside of conference. Big Ten's playing a handful of games in conference, and I don't like it. Whether it's week 0 in Ireland or week 1 of the regular season on a Thursday night, conference games are meant to be after you play your non-conference.
Yeah, Mike, but that game in Ireland may be a very telltale for the head coach at Nebraska.
I want to go back to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But
okay.
you're Irish. They go on the road to
Iowa
Columbus.
State. Yep.
I love this.
Head coach's alma mater.
This is big. This is
number 5 versus number 2. Let's get it on right now.
Big.
Absolutely. And I also like the fact that Oregon's playing Georgia right out of the gate. They're playing on. They're playing right before us. So I like it. Don't run. Don't duck and get one of these homecoming scheduled games. In week 1. Yeah. Let's see what you got. Everybody has the same amount of time to prepare for the game. Don't say you need a warm up before you get going. To me, that speaks to a different mentality that I'm not a big fan of. You know, if you're gonna play a brutal schedule, come on out with it, come out swinging, and let's see where you are right out of the gate.
The other thing that's cool about this is you know the rules now in college football as it relates to the college football playoff.
Absolutely.
If you're Notre Dame and Ohio State, I don't think it's unfair to say you have aspirations of being in the Final Four in that college football playoff.
That's correct.
And you also know that if you play Ohio State or Notre Dame, depending on which side of the ledger you look at,
correct,
and you win that game, that
boosts
your resume.
You're in the driver's seat.
But the other side of the coin is if you lose that game but it's a respectable game, it doesn't kill your season.
You're not out of it.
It does not kill your season. Week 1, week 2, maybe week 3 losses do not kill you the way college football is structured currently. So you should go out and play those games, to your point. See what you got. Test yourself early.
Mike, I'm very intrigued. And like I said, I'm more intrigued about college and high school than I am about pros because for the first time in a long time, we've seen these teams actually schedule really tough opponents right out of the gate. The fact that Notre Dame and Ohio State are getting it on, this is only the 7th time in both schools' histories that they faced each other. That's a big deal. And when you talk about 2-story programs and programs that are already recognizable around the country, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that game. Just like with the Georgia-Oregon game, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that game. And I respect the hell out of all 4 of those teams for not being afraid to schedule one another and go up against one another, knowing, as you said, Mike, what could be at stake depending on the outcome of the game and how the game is played out.
So if you go to ESPN.com, and I know you and Sean didn't like when we went through the Cardinal schedule when the computer told us wins and losses each week, but they have a randomizer that tells you what's your favorite team's chance of making the college football playoffs.
Yep.
And I picked Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And then they said, will Notre Dame lose 1 or 2 games? I said they'll lose 1 game.
Okay.
And they asked me what game will it be, and I picked Ohio State.
Okay.
And so they win out after Ohio State. If they lose the Ohio State game, they still have a 95% chance of going into the college football playoffs if they run the rest of their schedule.
Mike, there has to be some level of respect for who you play, not just how big you win.
Right.
And I think for those teams that still schedule those cupcakes in week 1, I think you have to understand that there's a opportunity where you can't just go out there and play these teams that have no chance of having success long term. You've got to be able to put your resume out there, and it's got to be as strong as it possibly can from start to finish. You can't mess around with having teams that are not there and not able to really matter in the big scheme of things, because those teams that play those cupcakes at the beginning of the season, those games won't even matter once you start getting into the final tally of who's going to be eligible for the college football playoffs and not.
Well, and I'm going to go same argument or same conversation with your former teammate, Jim Harbaugh. He did that.
Right.
This non-conference schedule, and look, I get it. A lot of these games might have been scheduled before he even got there the way they do it.
Right.
But they play Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn back-to-back at home. You win those games by 3 or 4 touchdowns each, and what do you know?
Nothing.
You don't know a thing about your team.
Because you're having the third string guys playing by the third quarter.
And the other thing, and again, after last year, Coach Harbaugh's off the hot seat. He's got breathing room, all that.
He put himself right back on it.
Platooning quarterbacks?
No, that is not the way to go. That is awful.
Make a decision.
That is not the way to go, Mike, and I'm so disappointed in my former teammate. And you thought that after that win and that season that they had last year that he would piggyback off of that and ride that into a new era and have new expectations. Here he goes being the same old guy that we've seen in the previous years, and it just kind of makes you wonder, does he truly understand that he's in charge of one of the more storied programs in all of college football?
My thing with Harbaugh has always been, like, he feels like he's above it all.
Right.
Like he's bigger than it all.
Yeah.
You know,
a little arrogant.
Taking the team to South Africa and Italy and doing
yeah.
And I get it. You got boosters that pay for everything and all that, but educating the whole man, he says.
Right.
And then you go out and you do what he did in those years.
Yeah.
And this decision, or just he's quirky. Everybody who you know him better than us. There's just something.
Yeah. It doesn't fit.
It does not fit. Yeah.
It does not fit.
But college football underway as we wrap this segment up and get to pump the brakes and dad jokes. We did have a game in week 1, or week 0 as they call it, that we want to talk about.
Ireland.
Nebraska goes to Ireland and loses to Northwestern, but the way they lost is the coaching decision is ridiculous. And the next day I was reading the Lincoln newspapers.
It's not good.
He's done.
Mike, you can't lose that game. You can't lose that game because of what you've done the previous, 2-3 years?
You have no margin for error.
You got no margin for error, and to have a lead, Mike, and to blow that lead and then to it not be close at the end, Mike, to have Northwestern essentially pull away from you at the end. I mean, one, it's a loss in the conference.
Yep.
So that's a big negative. And you lose overseas where there was nobody else to watch but you, and everybody saw how you mismanaged that game. Mike, it's not a great look. Whatever magic he had at Central Florida, there is no magic now with his alma mater, and we've seen that happen before, where a coach that is pretty popular amongst the alum not get it done, and if he's going to get fired, Mike, I don't think they're going to do it mid-season, but I think this is probably the last season for Scott Frost at the University.
And this is a situation where not only does he take himself down with it, he takes the athletic director with him, because Trev Alberts is also a big name in Nebraska.
My former teammate,
and he's out of the black shirt family.
He put his rep on the line for Scott Frost,
and he put his rep on the line to bring him back this year.
That's right.
Take a pay cut.
That's right.
Blow out some assistants.
That's right.
Change your coordinators.
That's right.
I have faith. I have trust. This is my man.
Yeah.
You make that line in the sand. If Scott Frost doesn't have a miracle,
it could be a joint departure.
They're both gone.
It's a joint departure.
And the other thing that's maddening, if you're a Nebraska fan, is you go back and look at it, and you talked about this, in terms of it's Northwestern, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Northwestern flashes every now and again. It's
right.
the smart guys
right.
that go to school in Evanston, and
right.
sometimes they're tough-nosed football players, a la their head coach,
yep.
who did a better job of embodying himself with his team than
right.
Scott Frost did. This is a team that lost to Nebraska 56-7 a year ago.
Yikes.
So that's where this is coming from, and to go all the way back and do it the way they did it in front of that was a Nebraska crowd on national TV. I don't know how you come back from it, and they don't have anything left on the schedule. Nebraska doesn't have anything left on the schedule, like a marquee game that they can resurrect or pull themselves out of the fire. I check that. They've got Oklahoma. I don't know what Oklahoma's going to be this year, but I don't think a win over Oklahoma coupled with the way they lost this Northwestern game is enough to save them. They don't get Michigan. They don't get Penn State.
Yeah.
Those crossover games are not in Nebraska's favor.
But based on the performance that we saw against Northwestern, Mike, I don't think they can beat Oklahoma.
I'm saying if you go down to – no, I agree with you, but I'm saying if let's say you're in the fluke camp that says that's a fluke. It was a bad call, snowballed, whatever. I don't think it is, because at some point, what's the old saying? If somebody's trying to tell you who they are, listen to them.
Believe them.
Believe them?
Yeah.
So, I think you're right. But let's say if that was the case,
yeah.
Oklahoma's really their only opportunity to resurrect it. You're not going to do it in the Big Ten West.
No, you're not going to do it. And Mike, it's sad because Scott Frost is a really good guy. He was around my age. We were in college around the same time, and this is a guy that won 2 national championships. Yeah. And you think about former alum that are going back to their alma mater. You see Mario Cristobal. I'm curious to see how that goes in Miami, because Miami is not the big dog on the block. Clemson is the big dog on the block. Carolina is in a better position with a better situation than what they are. So just because you got the familiar face and the hometown kid comes back and tries to make good, it doesn't always result in wins and being a storybook ending.
Well, a lot of these programs living on past glory, Nebraska, Miami, and others.
My goodness.
Michigan for a while, and like I said, Harbaugh gets up off the mat a little bit for that. Real quickly, locally, ASU starts the season this Thursday night, a couple nights from when we're recording. So by the time you listen to this, the results may be known. They host NAU at the stadium. And I don't know what the expectations are for ASU football this year. A lot of off-season news, and I think if you're close to the ASU program, whatever you think about what's going on right now, you're just glad it's football.
Yeah.
Have games. Take your mind off of whatever else is going on. They're non-conference, I believe. Sean Cressman, keep me honest. Home against Northern Arizona, home against Eastern Michigan, and then I think they go to Stillwater to to play Oklahoma State
Yes,
before they get into
you
conference
just have
play.
those games flipped. So home against NAU
Okay, then
to
to
Oklahoma
Stillwater.
State, then back for Eastern Michigan.
Meanwhile, down in Tucson, the Show Me tour begins. Like we're not living off recruiting anymore. We're not living off of any of it. And Kevin Sumlin and whoever the athletic director was gets another. Fire him again,
Right?
Because this non-conference schedule that U of A is playing is an absolute joke as far as I'm concerned for where this program is right now.
Yep.
They need Michigan's non-conference schedule and give Michigan this one.
Yep.
They've got a home game. They travel to San Diego State, a home game against Mississippi State, and then your third non-Pac-12 game is North Dakota State. North Dakota State would be in the top 5 or 6 in the Pac-12 if you did them in the conference. There is no reason in the world Arizona should be playing North Dakota State. None.
Yeah,
so
it's
fire
crazy.
Kevin Sumlin again for putting that game on the schedule.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how U of A and ASU plays out. I root for Herm Edwards. He's a man that I have so much respect for, and with this whole situation that's been going on here in
lot of
recent
smoke
history,
around that.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a good look, and you just hope that they can find some silver lining and really rally around Herm and rally as a team to go out there and put a good product out on the field.
A lot of people down on the NIL and the transfer portal for different reasons.
Jealous.
But, yeah, maybe.
Jealous.
But in terms of the transfer portal, I think ASU fans should be very happy that rule exists because, these guys coming in might be – you can't build a program through the transfer portal just like you can't build a program through
Hello,
JUCO.
USC.
Right? But I think ASU got thrown a lifeline with some of the quality players that came through and will be starting for them this year. So NAU, ASU Thursday night from the stadium, and then the U of A and San Diego State from the new stadium in San Diego on Saturday afternoon. All right, we'll step aside here. On the other side, we've missed it for a couple weeks. We're ready.
That's right.
Time to go. Pump the brakes and dad jokes coming up on Train and Grose. Welcome back in at Train and Grose. I haven't done this in a couple weeks, and I'm just trying not to get punched in the throat here.
You sound like somebody already did.
Workplace violence.
Wow.
Yeah.
But this is where the hard-working staff of Train and Grose comes together with some questions. Oh, by the way, I went to my local Target this weekend. 'Cause
Target.
I knew we'd be getting back together here sooner or later.
Yep.
And I went in and I said, Mr. Target, man, he was stocking the shelves near the candles. I said, where are the General Mills, the cereal candles? I said, I need to get Bertrand the Lucky Charms.
No.
And he said, I'm sorry. Those all sold out.
Did they really?
We can't keep them on the shelf. He goes, you may be able to get them at Target.com.
Wow.
Not that this is an advertisement.
We
for
can't
that.
keep them on the shelf, he says.
The cereal candles
Hold up.
flew off the shelves. So sorry, B-Train, you don't get a cereal
Hey,
candle.
they can have them. They can fill up their houses with that smell all they want. I'm good. I'll keep to the traditional nice smells of sandalwood. You know what I mean? Nice manly smells. You know what I mean? And teak wood, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
No Honey Nut Cheerio?
No Honey Nut Cheerio. No Fruity Pebbles and all that other nonsense.
The Fruity Pebbles is money, though. I don't know about it as a candle, but as a cereal, sign me up, boy.
We were watching TV last night, and for some reason, something on TV caught my attention. I said to Karen, I can't tell you the last time I had a bowl of cereal. Like, I don't even think we have milk
That's a
in the
good question.
house.
I don't know.
Do you have a box of cereal in your house?
No, not a single one. I got oatmeal in the house,
No, like
but no cereal, no.
Fruity Pebbles.
Yeah, no.
Milk
no.
milk has been shamed for the most part in our society.
Yeah.
You know, cow's milk is not as acceptable as it once used to be.
Can I tell you something about that?
Sure.
So Meg, favorite of the program, and
Sure.
she's going to
Meg
get mad at
Sturp.
me for this. She was in Texas this weekend. and
Okay.
She was glad to get out. But
Sure.
when she was little, she used to get ear infections. Took her to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, what are you feeding her? And we went down the list, and Karen said, milk and whatever. And he said, like regular cow? She's like, yeah. He goes, the only living beings on this planet that need to drink cow milk
Or
cow's
cows,
milk are
baby
baby
cows.
cows.
That's right.
So after that, we 86 the milk, and there you
No
go.
more ear infections.
No.
Amazing
They were
how that
talking-
works.
yeah. So no more cow's milk. I don't know why I told that story other than you made me think
I
of it.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was cow's milk was a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not meant for us,
What
man.
do you
It's
guys
meant for
eat?
baby cows.
You guys go with
Little silk, little
Yeah.
almond milk.
almond milk. A lot of
Yeah.
people doing the almond milk now.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
Nothing wrong with
Okay.
that.
All right, pump the brakes. It's been a while, so let me refresh your memory here. I'm going to give you guys some topics in the world of sports, a little pop culture as well. You tell me. I'll make a statement. You tell me if you're pumping the brakes on it or if you're going to roll with that statement. All right. Kenny Pickett. You guys watch any Steelers football in the preseason at all?
No, I didn't watch a single rep of preseason.
All right, that's
football.
fine. You don't need to answer this question, but he did go 29 of 36, 261 yards, completed 80% of his passes, threw 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. So pump the brakes or not, starting a rookie quarterback day one is the way to go.
Pump the brakes. It depends on the quarterback, but more times than not, they're going to fail more than they succeed. And when you have a veteran quarterback that can go in and take those lumps for said rookie quarterback, then you take the pressure off of him, because if you go out and you struggle as a rookie quarterback and then you got to go to the backup, you can't bring that.
You can't go back.
You can't go back.
You can go the other way.
But you can go the other way. You can bring the rookie off the bench, and he can be that guy that gives the team a little bit of an energy boost.
Yep.
It always works that way. Ben Roethlisberger, speaking of the Pittsburgh Steelers, did not start his first game. But he did start the second game all the way through. He only lost 2 games in his first season. So worked out pretty well with how they were able to get it done.
And I was going to go the other way, and I still will. But what B-Train makes sense. But I look at the Steelers, and do you trust Mike Tomlin?
Yes.
Which you do. And the other thing, even with Mitchell Trubisky, if that's your option, what's the upside for the Steelers this year in that division?
They're not going anywhere.
So if you're going to do it, get the kid some experience,
let him take his lumps.
Let him learn, let him take some lumps, and do it under Mike Tomlin's tutelage. Because, again, I'm not going to trust this decision to every coach around the league. But if there's some guy that's secure in his job and knows what he's doing and has a vision for the long term,
and that's Mike Tomlin to a T.
It's got to be Mike Tomlin. So he knows what he's doing. So I can't disagree with you, because you've been in this, you understand this much better than I ever will. But if Mike Tomlin is going that way, it's good enough for me.
I've seen it both ways. I've seen rookies start. I was with Peyton Manning when he struggled mightily his rookie year. Things worked out after that. But I've also seen the guys kind of the Carson Palmers, where they sit the first year, you let somebody come in and take the reps for them, and it works out that way too. So it's worked both ways. It really depends on the individual situation, the individual quarterback room on a respective team, and the team around them. If it's a team that's ready to win now, do you want that quarterback to be the weak link? Or do you want a guy that can kind of manage it and see where it goes and not put the team in jail?
And that's what I said, too, because I think expectations play a significant role in this. I got a buddy who's a diehard Steelers fan, and we were talking about this weekend when the game was going on, and he's all excited like everybody in Pittsburgh is about Pickett. And I said, listen, you don't start a rookie quarterback day one on a roster like the Steelers have going into this year. With
the quarterback room that they have.
Yeah, because you've got guys that can play. You start a rookie quarterback day one on the Jaguars roster last year. You start a rookie day one on the Jets roster last year, where, hey, let's all grow together, right? With like Joe Burrow did in Cincinnati, and look how that worked out a couple years later. You know what I mean? That's where you start the rookie quarterback. You don't do it on this Steelers roster.
No, you don't.
Yeah. I go back to what are the expectations here this year? If Mitchell Trubisky starts instead, do you think they're going to compete with the Bengals and the Ravens?
No. So expectations are a major factor in this. 23 consecutive preseason wins for the Ravens dating back to 2016.
Yeehaw.
Pump the brakes or not, that's an impressive record.
Pump the brakes.
No, really?
How many Super Bowls have they won in that space?
In that time, none.
Okay.
None.
So what are we talking about? We're talking about practice.
Yeah.
In the words of the great Allen Iverson, we're talking about practice.
23.
Not a game.
23.
We're talking about practice.
23.
We're talking about practice.
I agree. It's at least a interesting headline, in my opinion.
It's a good footnote.
A good footnote. It's the second most impressive preseason stat when the Lions went 4-0 the year they won
0-16.
Zero games in the regular season.
Exactly right.
I put it in the same category.
Do you give the coaching staff credit, though? I mean, 23 wins in a row.
No. It's a lot of luck, and I think for the team, it depends on how long their starters play and how long the other team starters play and what they're trying to get out of the preseason game. Maybe the Baltimore Ravens know this now, and it's a point of pride now, but I think when they probably had the first 7 or 8, I don't think anybody cared.
I think there's a lot to that. What you just said, they don't want to be the guys that are in that fourth quarter don't want to be the team that lets that down. I think it's a point of pride.
Now.
It's a point of pride on
now
that. Yeah,
it is.
I agree with that.
Now it is.
When's the ring ceremony?
14 of the last 16 seasons, you've had a team in the NFL go from last place in their division the previous season to first place the next season. That's happened in 14 of the last 16 years.
Yep.
Pump the brakes or not, one of these candidates this season will make it 15 of 17. The Jets, the Jags, the Ravens, the Broncos, the Giants, the Panthers, the Seahawks, or the Lions.
I could definitely see the Ravens. I can see the Ravens. If Lamar Jackson comes out and he's Lamar Jackson and they don't have a slew of injuries as if they had last year in the preseason and everybody's pretty healthy throughout, I think you can see Lamar Jackson be a very motivated quarterback and look like the 2019 MVP that was able to take the league by storm. He might not be the conventional quarterback that's going to stand in the pocket and deliver the ball down the field, but man, that dude is so fun to watch. And if he's able to have any kind of defense to go along with what they do in ball control on the offensive side, I think that division, more than any of those other candidates, and that team has the best chance of doing it.
I agree with that. I mean, it's a tough road to go. You look at who's on top in that division, but I could see that.
See, I don't know if it is because, I mean, are we really buying the Bengals last year?
Until proven otherwise, you have to, don't you?
I don't know.
Yeah, by the Bengals because they're young enough to.
They are. They're extremely young, but I go back to the amount of injuries the Ravens had last year. Remember, their season was derailed in the preseason, man. I mean, they were searching for guys on the street to play running back and to play in their secondary.
But winning cures all, though. When you've experienced winning, now you know how to do it, and now you've been accustomed to it.
Yeah.
You've been in those pressure situations. They've had the playoff games where it was close, and they were able to learn how
Fight
to win
back,
on the fly.
beat Kansas City in
and
Kansas
now,
City. Yeah.
when you've got Joe Burrow with all the confidence that he has and those receivers that he has and skill position players, my goodness.
Well, and to that point, so they've got somebody in front of them that makes it hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think you had Denver on that list.
Denver was the yes,
I just have a hard time seeing Denver going
They're not-
all the
yeah,
way.
I agree.
And overtaking the Chargers or the Chiefs. Even do they finish ahead of the Raiders? I don't know. The one team on there, based on what you said before, is it absolutely crazy to say the Jaguars could win the South?
Yes.
The Jaguars could win the South.
You think so?
They could.
Well, these are all long shots anyways.
Not the Ravens. I think the Ravens do it.
Okay, just based on what we did talk about, Mike, to your point, who in the AFC South are you scared of? Are you scared of the Titans? Are you scared of the Colts?
I think the way the Colts play. I mean, you guys remember how many games they won in a row before they faltered?
Are you scared of the Texans?
Faltered late. I think the Colts are the team right now because you got a veteran quarterback I don't think is gonna make a whole hell of a lot of mistakes. But their running game is just absolutely sensational, and then defensively they can get after you
I
too.
love Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, Taylor's
But
an absolute beast.
Who are they throwing to though? Who is Matt Ryan
Michael
throwing
Pittman
to?
Jr.
All due respect, I love Michael Pittman Jr. And I'm out of respect for his dad because I played against his dad. His dad's a Super Bowl champion.
Yep.
If he's the number one guy, that ain't
I
much.
agree with that. So, but I think on this list, the only team I would put any kind of money on whatsoever is the Ravens. And not only would I put money on, I think they do it. I think they return to the top spot in that division.
Man, that South is so bad.
It's bad.
It is.
All you have to be is the best team.
It was like the NFC East last year. Remember the NFC East last year? 2 years.
I'll even say first team to 9 wins.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
First team to 9 wins.
I'd agree with that.
That division.
Yeah.
And that could be when you go back. That could be not out of the realm of possibility. A sub 500 team.
I'll tell you this though,
in the postseason.
If the Colts aren't the
hosting
team,
a game.
If the Colts aren't the team, Frank Reich is out.
Nah, they get a mulligan for
After
Carson
last
Wentz.
year,
They get
though?
a mulligan for Carson Wentz.
You go to
Nobody saw Carson Wentz being that bad.
You lose your last 3. You go to Jacksonville, and you know what the bed to miss the playoffs.
And he had the courage of his convictions to say, I made a mistake and get Carson Wentz out of there.
I looked it up. The win total, Las Vegas win total projections for the Jaguars is 6.5.
Yeah.
So to your point, if 9 wins it, you're only 2.5 away from that.
2.5 away, yeah.
All right.
Pump the brakes or not on the NFL's top 100 list, voted on by the players.
Uh-huh.
Aaron Donald, number 2.
Tom Brady, number 1.
Tom Brady, number 1. Pumping the brakes or no?
No, we're not pumping the brakes. This man has 7 Super Bowl wins. Did you see his stats from last year at the age of 44?
I did.
He led the league in completion percentage, total yards, and total touchdowns at 44 years old.
I thought for sure I'd get the defensive guy to go my way on this one.
Now, now I've said Aaron Donald is the best
He's
player.
unbelievable.
He's the best player. I said that 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And people looked at me like I had 3 heads.
He's unbelievable.
He has continued. He is the best player in all the land. He is better at his job than anybody else at their job, including the quarterbacks. But when you talk about 7 out of 23, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, Should have been the MVP of the whole league last year, if not for the 4 picks that Aaron Rodgers threw last year. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's Brady. Brady didn't dominate.
You?
I can't argue. Go Blue.
Well, I'm going to hit it because I'm pumping the brakes. Aaron Donald's just a straight game changer.
He's the best player,
unreal.
but when you start talking about the number one guy as far as his impact on the team.
Okay. All right. If we're going that way.
If you're playing pickup football in the backyard, and on the wall is Tom Brady and Aaron Donald, who you take?
Well, Aaron Donald swung a helmet at a Bengal the other day in a joint practice.
Apparently he's a dirty player.
I'm taking
No, he's
him.
not a dirty player, but the question I have is why are you scheduling those practices against the team you just lost to in the Super Bowl?
Right, exactly
That was
right. Weird. That was weird.
Yeah, that made no sense.
Yeah.
You're asking for that.
All right, last one before we get to our dad joke and wrap things up here. You know, you guys I like my polls. You know that.
Yeah.
But more than 15,000 people were asked if they'd rather work 8-hour days, 5 days a week, or 10-hour days, 4 days a week. 70% of the 15,000 people polled said, give me 4 10-hour days. You pumping the brakes on that?
Yeah, I'm pumping the brakes.
Really? You want 5 days of work?
I don't want to work 10 hours in one day. That's a lot on the body because now you're limiting how much rest and recovery time you get. Then you're limiting how much time you get to eat and spend time with your family because now you're married to your job. Wow. You're married to your job. What time do you have? If you got 10 hours on the job and then you got 8, for whatever else. I mean, there's only 24 in a day. So what are we talking about? And you're supposed to sleep 8 hours, ideally.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of time to be at home chilling and taking advantage of all the stuff that you work for.
Mm-hmm.
From experience, give me the 5 days.
So you're hitting it too?
I'm hitting it. The man's going to get it out of you either way.
Yeah.
It's true.
And
spread it out, man.
We at the day job, we've experimented with that, and the 4.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, the 4. It doesn't work out the way you think it does.
Really?
No, it doesn't. In theory, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
But in practice, it gets to be a little bit challenging.
All right. That's today's Pump the Brakes, so you know where we're headed now. It is time
buddy.
for the world-famous B-Train Dad Joke of the Week. And it also has its own grading system. If you're joining us for the first time, B-Train's going to hit us with the dad joke no matter what. Getting one of those. Solid dad joke. Going to hear the laughter. If it's above and beyond, we're all going to tell our friends. He gets a standing O. However, there is that chance that it just does not quite land and we get a little it has happened before. So,
yeah, buddy.
B-Train, lay it on us.
All right, here we go. A furniture store keeps calling me, but all I wanted was a one-night stand.
I really enjoy that one. That
was good.
I mean, that's damn near here. I'm going to tell somebody that, so I'll give that to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's you and I had the movie scale. Would you watch the movie if it comes on?
Yeah.
The scale here should be: would you tell that joke to another person?
And I would.
And I will tell that joke to another person.
Because if you just get a chuckle, okay. But I am going to. I'm not even going to say would I. I'm going to tell somebody that joke.
Yeah, because usually you say, well, Karen asked me, what was B-Train's dad joke?
Yeah.
Because we did a remote a couple times and she couldn't hear it.
I don't know if she can do that one at the school though.
I don't think she can do that one at school, but she always asks me. Sometimes I'm like, damn, I don't even remember.
Yeah. Right.
But that one,
yeah,
I'm gonna call her on the way home. I'm gonna tell her the dad jokes I don't fit.
That's solid.
That's gonna do it for episode 84.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter @Train and Grose. And we'll see you next time.
We'll holla.